The Brisbane Lions Fancast wouldn't be possible without our 2024 sponsors, Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Hop On Brewery Tours give you the chance to learn and experience some of the best craft breweries across Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Check them out and book yourself a tour right now at hoponbrewerytours.com.au. And Abby and the team at Crisp Communications, not only are they going to get you some Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers, but they can help you out if you're in business and you need a marketing push, you need help with your digital marketing, your very own podcast, whether it's stickers for your own business. They offer it all. Web design, podcast management, social media, training and coaching. It's all available at crispcoms.co. Make sure you check out Abby and the team because they will get you everything you need to get your business skyrocketing. All right, let's get into the show.
And now Charlie Cameron. This is in good hands here.
Nope. The Brisbane Lions Fancast is back. A nice and early edition this week. We're recording on a Friday, straight after the damage that was the GWS game on Anzac Day down in Canberra. And boy, I tell you what, there are some very, very angry, frustrated, vitriolic Lions supporters out and about, and it's not hard to see why. Leading into this game, it was basically a must-win. We had little margin for error leading into this game, and now that margin for error is basically non-existent. We thought, coming down against GWS, a team we haven't lost to for a while, a team without Toby Green, Sam Taylor, Steve Cornelio, at a ground that they are historically not that great at. This should be a must-win game that we should get the 4 points from. Instead, we got utterly embarrassed, to put it nicely. Not much positive to take away from that performance at all. First half was okay. Second half, no bueno. How'd you see it?
Let's just say I was happy I had some delicious ice cream to eat in the second half. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, let's do what we do. We will have a chat about the game. I don't know that it's going to be a lengthy chat. The changes, Conor McKenna did come in. So there was obviously reshuffling. Zorko went forward with the ball. Darcy Fort came in. Oscar McInerney went out. Lyons got dropped. Tunstall was made the sub. So a bit of reshuffling in amongst the starting 22. Tunstall back to the sub. I wasn't a big fan of the Zorko forward of the ball initially. Obviously we know what he can do with the ball, and it has been handy for us behind the ball, and that did change come half time. But some of Connor's kicking was pretty woeful last night. He wasn't alone there. It was he definitely had a few mates.
We kind of both got what we forecasted, really. Yeah. Like we had Darcy playing on the wing, we had Zorko playing forward of the ball.
Missing Oscar was very noticeable. Just the way Darcy Fort got manhandled in around the ruck contest was so obvious. And Kieran Briggs really took advantage of that any chance that he could. And I think it was the first quarter alone or first half, Fort gave away 2 ruck infringements as well, which got the ball moving forward for those guys. And
it was literally the first thing that happened in the game.
Yeah.
I was like, good start.
I know.
Good start, man.
Yeah.
But Briggs is very much in the Shane Mumford mold. And I know Shane Mumford, has taken on the role of ruck coach down there, but he almost was single-handedly, not single-handedly keeping him in the game, but he was keeping that kind of clearance contest work, particularly around the ground, well in check for GWS in the first half. And they're arrow straight kicking. Callum Brown, is he possibly the purest kick in the game?
He'd have to be. I mean, the amount of goals they hit from outside 50 was just ridiculous. But yeah, I think their precise kicking and their quick ball movement, we just could not keep up with them. I did think, and I posted on our Twitter feed, which was going a little bit spare on Thursday night, that they were kicking at 90%, and that's just not sustainable for a full game. So I did have a little bit of faith that would come back a little bit, and it did in the second quarter. And we didn't make most of our opportunities. Again, hit the post 3 times in a bit over a quarter of footy. So once again, failed to make the most of our opportunities, and that's the bloody theme for the Lions this year. And Fagan keeps pointing to we won inside 50s again. I was like, well, that's great, but you don't get 4 points for winning the inside 50s because it's coming straight back out more often than not.
Yeah, I got to admit, there were very few metrics that Fagan could have leaned on in terms of saying the little wins in terms of that. We've always been a slightly inefficient forward 50 team. Never been as deadly as some. particularly just in terms of volume to scores. Maybe volume to goals might have been a bit different, but like, yeah, when they were kicking at 90%, it was just like, oh shit, here we go. Which was not a sustainable thing. But then when that ran out, like, I think the biggest thing for me was their willingness to run and their work rate and their leg speed that just absolutely killed us. And like, it's insane to hear like what the hell is going on in Lachie Neale's brain at the moment. Like he has got to be one of the dumbest people affiliated with this club at the moment. Like one of them, not, yeah. Because for him to say on Tuesday night, I didn't run very much against Geelong because it was raining. And I understand that he was saying that it was the necessity for running and the amount that it was like more of a stoppage game. It was less back up and forward and stuff. That is like entirely leaving you open to criticism because it doesn't necessarily come across that way to most people. Yeah. They just hear, it was wet, I was lazy, I didn't run a lot. And I tell you what, he looked fucking lazy last night. As did a lot of people.
That was like quite like the most obvious and concerning thing, and in stark contrast to that game against Melbourne, the pressure, the intensity, you know, running to and from contests, the work rate, the ethic, the tackling pressure, it was all gone. We just looked so lazy, so slow, and there's just no excuse for it. GWS coming off a 5-day break as well, but they played like that new fella, Darcy Jones, like lightning quick. Finn Callahan, the amount of times he just came sprinting out of the back half, just running past whoever he wanted, and just pinpointing a left-footing kick. We were just so far off the mark in terms of what was acceptable for pressure and hunger.
Yeah, like we somehow had a lifeline. Just, you know, Cam Rayner showed up for 5 minutes. Charlie Cameron opted to kick a couple goals, and it was like, oh, we're right in that. And it's like, take your opportunity to be in a game that you probably shouldn't be in. You know, like, admittedly, the last kind of couple minutes of the half was like, seemed a bit tinfoil hat-ish in terms of, you know, the free kick overturned, 50-metre, Lachie Neale getting kind of chopped in the throat. And then, like, you've got Josh Kelly kicking a goal. It's just like, cool. So we gave them a little buffer through ill discipline. Got to say, the amount of people, when you go to the tribunal and you let Hogan get off for trying to punch a dude. I mean, like we talked on Monday. Yeah. And I said they were absolutely laughing if they thought that he would get off Hogan, and he did because there was negligible contact. Well, you know who else made negligible contact and got 11 weeks in a grand final? Alistair Lynch.
That's true.
But if you're saying that, then you're leaving yourself open. And I counted 5 times that they had like body shots or throat shots on players and like, you know, knocked them over. And it's like, okay, so you're just perpetuating the thing that you're like saying we want to get punches out of the game. And like a couple of our blokes did it too, but I don't think that they probably would have done that had it not happened like 4 or 5 times, you know, heading into it. That one on Lachie Neale was like pretty bad by Callan Ward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a little bit over. Obviously, Lockie's frustrated with the treatment he's getting off the ball and around stoppages, but he's flopped a few times this year, and I'm not loving that. And I get it. If the umpire sees it, falls for it, gets a free kick. It's good for our team. But
I don't think that was a flop. I think he got hit pretty hard.
Yeah, he didn't need to put as much mayo on it as he did, I think.
Yeah.
I'd rather
it's probably symptomatic of just not getting stuff.
Yeah, and and,
you know, when you have a situation of Callan Ward, which I think similarly flopping when Dunkley ran into him, it's like, you know, Dunkley ran into him, he didn't hit him high, didn't hit him in the back, he just put body on him. It's like that's not a free kick.
No,
it's not a free kick if it's in the game. It's not a free kick if it's off the ball. It's just like body contact for someone who, like, you know, dropped toe hold a player as he was leaving contest. It's like, okay, cool. But I don't know, like that the end of the first half was annoying because like the writing was definitely on the wall in terms of just like the wheels were starting to fall off, but we were still in the game. And it's like, utilize the fact you're still in the game to be present. And they just weren't. Like, outrun, outworked. I said it before. Like, every metric was just like insanely terrible. Question for you. Do all the goals that they scored from outside 50 count as goals from inside 50 or efficiency stats?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know where they sit in the numbers and all that sort of stuff, but I tell you what they do count for is 6 points on the
goals.
Yeah.
Maybe someone can tell us because I'm curious about that. That's just one of those things that I'm like, I wonder if that is a thing where, you know, because it felt disgustingly similar to the grand final a little bit. And then, you know, that's the thing is like you saying before, we won inside 50s. It's like, cool. But, or, you know, you said Fagan said we won inside 50s. It's like, cool. But like you can technically have an inside 50 kicking the ball 49 meters out, like, or handballing it 3 times between 3 dickheads. So like, bam, there's our stats, metric, KPIs. Awesome.
Just to quickly go back to that couple of passages play before halftime. Like, I don't want to see that from your 2 leaders, like your captain and your vice captain, both. Like, we've got a free kick for another forward 50 entry, which, granted, the way things were going, we weren't going to make the most of it. We wouldn't have kept them straight back out. But to reverse that and then to give a 50-metre penalty away to then give them a goal, essentially, that is, like, that's not... I'd much rather our leaders show leadership and work through that by playing good footy instead of just resorting to this bullshit, like, faux tough stuff that's going on.
Yeah, well, I know Harris Andrews gave away a free 50 the week before that was kind of pivotal, but like, I just don't see Harris Andrews making that sort of a decision to do it.
No, of course not.
Like, I don't, yeah. Like, I've been pretty hard on Lachie Neale the entire time he's been captain. I don't think he's a captain, personally. Like, I think he's a player that plays better when, I know he won a Brownlow last year, but I don't think that was his best year. I think he plays his best footy when he's kind of similar to Zorko, not having to worry about shit, doing his juggling, you know, before the game rather than whatever captains do. Let Harris do that.
Yeah.
And like, I tell you what, if Harris wasn't in the team, we would be so much worse off. Like, him and Leicester somehow are the only ones that seem to give a shit. I mean, Starcevic a little bit too, but he seems to just be like on the wrong end of luck.
And he just looks slow, Stars.
Yeah.
They not alone there.
They
like,
look
Archie went out with
heavy.
Archie went out with a hamstring, but he's looked off the boil for a few weeks now and slow. Even Link looks slower than he has. And maybe it is the wet weather game last week and they have got the heavy legs. I mean, but still, there's not a 10-goal difference.
Well, there is somewhere.
I mean, yeah, but
and, you know,
I mean, there's all sorts of, you know, it's the US trip, it's the shorter preseason, it's the preseasons that have all added up. It's being on top for so long. It's the scars from the grand final. It's the kiddie ACL. I mean, point to whatever you want as some sort of, you know, tangible thing you want for the poor performances. But the upshot of it is, it's just like, this is not the same team that went so well last year. Like,
no.
There's very few people on our list that have improved or maintained, you know, the form from last year. I can probably point to
absolutely not.
3.
Like, you're looking at a situation of like I think there were elements where like the vast majority of the team have been like extraordinarily consistent over the past 5 years.
Yep. And
like there are a couple of players that will kind of, you look at the highs and lows and they'll be pointed to, and we've seen them, but you know, on the whole, the entire team has been performing like close to their ceiling like most of the time. And now that they're not, it like the floor's lower than I thought, surely, like for a lot of these players. And like, you know, yeah, we're getting a lot of inside 50s and we're last in the competition. And it's like, in terms of goal conversion from them. And it's like, you're looking at that being like the delivery inside 50 is not good because it's either being pressure kicks. You know, we even saw when McCluggage had a few that were, you know, clear disposals when inside 50, take a mark, kick a goal or a point. And that's the other thing. We're not converting. Like, I want to see our set shot stats for the year, particularly between our 3 mains. Like, I mean, even Link McCarthy's spraying them and stuff, and he's normally like an absolute deadeye. It's like
he kicks a snap on a heinous angle from the non-preferred foot, and then he gets a lace-out delivery from Hugh McCluggage, 30 metres out, slide angle, and shanks that. It's just, it boggles the mind.
So you're looking at it being the delivery is not there because of the pressure being put on the ball. And that's what people talk about in terms of team defense. Like, your defense looks so much better when your mids are putting pressure on. And when our mids are getting nowhere near it. Like, I got to tell you, I was annoyed that we lost that game because it's the first loss of the season that Jared Lyons hasn't played in. So there goes that metric for me. You know, like, I was at least thinking, Jared Lyons isn't there to make our midfield look slow. But holy shit, did, you know, Tom Green and, you know, they had like Bedford and shit rolling through the midfield. It's like, guys that are not midfielders, that they're just like, the Lions look a bit leggy. Let's just throw all of our small little run and gunners in there and like have at it. And it's like, why can't we do that? Like, put some weird people in there.
Well, I mean, we have toyed with it before. Like, Link's attended a few centre bounces. Obviously, Rayner, Bailey, who is not an option at the moment. Even like a few years ago, Charlie Cameron was thrown into the centre for a couple.
I remember reading an article in about 2020 where it was like the highest centre bounce attendance versus clearance wins was like Ryan Lester. He'd attended like 3,
Yep.
and they won all clearances, and he'd gotten like 2, and it was like statistical anomaly. Obviously, doesn't make any sense, but it's fun.
Yeah,
and I'm all for things that are fun because they distract from things that are less fun, like your team getting beaten by 53 points. But like, going back to what I said, like, our ground ball gets have not been there. Like, and the writing was on the wall a little bit like that last year because our ground ball wins inside defensive 50 were terrible. We were worst or, in the bottom 3 in the competition last year for that in the defensive 50. And that has infected the forward half. It also seems to have infected the midfield a little bit. So it's like there's all these little factors that are going like, we're getting the inside 50s, but they are not the right ones. The people getting them are not doing anything with them. We're not following up. Like, no one is getting any second balls except Noah Answorth. Like, he's the only one that seems to be winning ground balls. There's a lot of problems. Like, there's a lot of problems everywhere, and it's like I don't know who's to blame because I don't buy into the idea of like, it was a short preseason because when do they stop? Like end of September.
Yep.
So you've got October, November, December, January, February, and then you're starting in March. That's 5 months.
Yeah, but I mean, there is mandatory time off that they have to have, and they are expected to keep certain fitness standards and stuff, but they're not.
Of course,
they're not allowed back in the club.
It's 5 months of recovery time. It's like, Premier League footballers have 2.5 months off, and they'll play an international tournament in that. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's like soccer might be a slightly less physically intense game, but they're also playing 60 to 70 games a season, not 22. My team just played 4 games in 10 days. That's insane. And it was virtually the same starting lineup for all 4 of those games. Yeah. So it's like, I don't have a lot of sympathy for the short turnarounds, the short, in inverted commas, preseason, because it's like, unless you got people going out for surgeries and stuff, which I know we did have. That said, Berry was one that went out for surgery, and he is playing, I think, some of the best footy that he's played in years. Yeah. In terms of consistency. So, like, that's a bit of a fallacy I don't buy into. And the coaching, it's like, I think it's probably a bit early to say that Fagan's lost the group, but I think certainly that the group aren't buying into the system at this point in time. Like, they're certainly not playing the way that he wants them to.
Yeah, we will. I didn't solicit for questions this week, partly because it was a short turnaround before we did the podcast, and the other part is I knew it was just going to be a bunch of nonsense of sack Fagan. So what I have done is sort of collated the main points that keep popping up every time we lose. Aside
lightning rounds.
Yeah, and we're just going to discuss those, including where it's all going wrong. And that's, I guess, we'll try and unpack that as much as we can and give our thoughts and feelings on some of that sort of stuff. But yeah.
Firstly, I'll say, like, GWS were really good.
Oh, absolutely.
They were really fucking good.
No.
And, like, Tom Green is amazing. Callahan, like, they said he looked like a young Bontempelli, and it's like, well, it's hard to argue with that a little bit, but at the same time, just like, cool your jets. Bontempelli never won a Brownlow, so you really want to be compared to him?
Jeez, that's a bit rough. Yeah, no, they
James Peatling was in centre clearance, like winning centre clearances. Like, that guy was doing nothing like 3 weeks ago, and he's in there winning clearance. That was I made a mental note to be like, he has no right to go into a centre bounce for starters, and then to run away. Like,
no, GWS, they were amazing. Like, and just imagine how much worse it could have been had they had, some more of their key players as well. So
maybe, but the people that weren't key players played pretty friggin' awesome too. Like, hit me with some lightning round questions.
Well, let's well, we got to do our hoponbrewerytours.com.au votes. Book you a half or full day tour right now at hoponbrewerytours.com.au. Visit some of the best breweries across Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And
you need some, like, mystifying miasma for these votes, or what?
All right. Well, I'll give you my podcast votes and, of course, my real world votes. Podcast votes: Harris the 3, Lester the 2, and raffle off the 1, Rayner, because he had a 5 good minute period in the second quarter. Real life votes: Callahan 3, Tom Green 2. And Darcy Burnless Jones won. It was fun to watch him play.
The child.
Yes, the child, but
I swear someone's younger brother just got on the field.
Him and that Harvey Thomas bloke that honestly don't look any older than 12 years old, but I tell you what, they made us look like absolute mugs, so good on them. And you know what? Cal Brown, great work as well, 3 goals.
Ice cold.
Yeah, they were all good. It's hard to vote either way because we were so bad and they were so good, so pick your players.
Yeah, well, I think I said last year when we played maybe St Kilda or something and Harris nearly broke the intercept record, and it was at this point in our team's development, we do not want to be having our defense having quote unquote good games or being our most important players, because it's not good. It's symptomatic of larger issues.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just something that's always been rumbling that's now kind of cracked. But yeah, Harris the 3, Lester the 2, and Berry the 1 for me. Berry's been pretty consistent in my votes, and I mean that little interchange on the wing in the first quarter or whatever was where he went an underground. I was like, yeah, man, you've been watching The Lizard, haven't you?
He had a good game, Bez. So yeah, no real complaints of giving him the 1 there as well. So yeah, other than that,
I would have put Callum Brown as my 3rd, but same as you in the real world. But I don't want to be in the real world right at this point in time.
Yeah, the real world has its problems, as you know. All right, let's have a look at some of the big talking points according to Lions fans, thanks to Crisp Communications. Crispcomms.co, marketing specialist based on the sunny coast. These guys will get your business absolutely booming, whether it's digital marketing, a new website, a podcast of your own, or they can get you some stickers if you like. They've got our free Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers. Head to our website if you want to get your hands on some of those. All right. I mean, obviously, the main thing that gets thrown up after every loss is Sack Fagan. We spoke about that last week. We indulged that conversation. We're not going to indulge that anymore at the moment because there's just no point. It's low-hanging fruit. I get people are angry. I get people are frustrated, and they want something to point the finger at, someone to be angry at. And I guess, obviously, that's Fagan. Sure, fine. He's not going to get sacked anytime soon.
May I?
Yes.
I did give a long list of people that had won premierships that I largely wouldn't have taken. We forgot about Alistair Clarkson, but I'm not taking that, so focus on that. Would you take Nigel Lappin?
From what I understand, he has no real desire or interest in being a senior coach. I thought that was the case too. Yeah, he's been... how long has he been at Geelong for? Forever. As midfield or some fairly senior position at Geelong. He's obviously got no intention of moving, and from all understanding, he's got no desire. Now, looking at some of the wackiness that's been popped up on social media after that loss last night, and there's been a fair amount. Justin Leppage's name.
That was a very diplomatic Andrew Dillon answer. You didn't answer the question.
If he was interested, sure, but at this point, I'm on Team Fags until I get driven into the floor that I'm not. Because the man took us from a wooden spoon to 4 points from a... I'm not going to forget that like everyone else seems to have. Leppage's name got thrown up again. And it's yeah, well, there you go.
The man that nearly destroyed the club.
Out of his hands a little bit, I understand. But yes, no, that would be...
Well, yes and no, but also the playing culture was terrible. Yeah. And I think that was as much the thing that Fagan had to right the wrong of. But... who are some more insane names? Jason Ackermanis?
Yes.
What? Like him as the coach?
Honestly, people are saying sack Fagan without any further thought. It's just well, literally anybody else would be better. I was like, well, obviously that's not the case. Everyone just cool your jets. Everyone just relax. All right.
Maybe just the whole narrative that Craig McRae doesn't actually do anything, in terms of all of his assistants deal with everything, and he does nothing, and it's just the face.
Yeah.
The weird grisly face out the front, which is kind of a bit of a reverse joke there in terms of the stuff behind and the face. Maybe that's led people to think that you just need a motivator.
Well, that's it. And
everyone else takes care of it. But if that's the case, if people really are saying sack Fagan and bring in John Clown, cool, but wouldn't then be the problem not Fagan and it would be the people behind?
Well, that's it. Everyone just keeps saying, well, Chris Scott, why don't you get Chris Scott? And it's not just Chris not just waiting by his phone for us to call and be like, hey, that job's yours now if you want it, by the way. He's got his own 6-0, probably soon to be 7-0 team that's doing quite all right that he's fine with. So anyway, in the same mold as the coach, I guess people are looking in and around the coach and the coach's box. It has been fairly stable for a while. The two names that are popping up more and more at the moment are Cam Bruce and Murray Davis, as like get him in, get him out. And Cam Bruce obviously fired from Carlton after a review. We picked him up, and now we've got a slow midfield. So people are sort of putting two and two together in that respect. Murray Davis, I don't buy as much. Obviously, we've got problems in the forward half at the moment, but Murray Davis was forward coach last year and there were no issues. Him and Jed Adcock did the swap at the end of 2022, and then Jed Adcock's now in charge of the worst backline in the world down at North Melbourne. So I'm not buying into the Murray Davis is at fault here. If there's been a tangible change in the forward line, it's Darcy Gardner for me. That's been the big noticeable thing that you can point out going, well, maybe this is something that isn't particularly working. So Cam Bruce I can buy into a little bit more because obviously the midfield is looking a bit stodgy. But once again, no obvious issues last year as well.
Yeah. I mean, Lockie looks slower.
Yep.
And Dunkley looks tired. It's weird. Maybe it was just, Dunkley doing some chop out in the ruck, and then it just, cooked him, and Lockie Neal obviously probably didn't come into the season in as sharp physical condition as he did, particularly last year. And, we did see there was an element of a bit of drop off from him in terms of his season the year after he won his previous Brownlow.
Yep.
I know he had a lot of injuries and stuff, and he probably is carrying injuries now, but it's not helping.
Well, he did. He had surgery after last year as well, didn't he? He was carrying around a groin or something.
Groin?
Yeah. So maybe he's struggling to come back from that. I mean, we've got Ashcroft to come back, but he's not exactly lightning quick, Ashcroft. But it does add a different element to the midfield mix, but it's not going to add, speed and zest to it.
No, I don't really know what to make of it, but I think...
And he's coming back from a knee, so he's not just going to come back and things are going to be fixed. So it's going to take a little bit more adjustment.
Allegedly, according to that GWS helmet man, coming back from an ACL is a lot easier than it was for Tom Doedee.
Well, the other thing about Ashcroft is he was sort of flagged to come back in and around the bye, which is in they sort of put round 10 as an arbitrary date, which is only a few weeks away. And there's no sign of him... he's running again. I don't know if he's training with the main group, but he's still TBC on the injury list. I think that's getting pushed back silently without anyone really asking too many questions about it. I think it's still going to be a while before we see Will playing any sort of footy, whether it be AFL or VFL.
Do you think they were given room for pause after the Tom Doedee situation?
I'm sure they definitely thought about it a little bit more, and they were well, we can't rush this kid back. So yeah, there's probably a little bit of that as well, but yeah, there's something not quite right there, I think, and it's just sort of the can's getting kicked down the road a little bit. So I guess we'll keep an eye on that one. But in terms of the forward line, obviously Darcy Gardner up forward, we've seen 7 weeks of it now, give or take. There was he did drift down back, and he last night drifted down back at times as well. Is that a big enough sample size for you to say this isn't working?
Well, it's just it's almost dependent on Rayner's impact. And I said that in the Melbourne game. I was sort of if, because Rayner wouldn't be able to go in the midfield, and then they just seem hesitant to put him in at centre bounce. And I understand, the 5-minute purple patch he had. I don't entirely know if he was in the midfield. I think he'd floated forward, and it's sort of well, what's going on here? There's no consistency in when you're being rolled through. I brought up a few weeks ago that game in 2019 where we rolled through everyone through the centre clearance against Melbourne, and Melbourne got ran through. That's exactly what happened last night to us. Obviously we know that that's a viable strategy because we did it. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about before, where we had people probably Lester and Charlie Cameron and Link McCarthy and Zach Bailey and Zorko and whoever else. The whole rigmarole. Berry, McCluggage, Bailey. I think I said Bailey twice, but why not? And it's okay, cool. In a game where we're getting dominated for leg speed and you're sticking.
Yep.
And it's your ruckman's getting bullied. and your 3 are toast compared to, Tom Green and whoever else is around there in terms of leg speed. Like, man, it's a hard situation. And then you're like, okay, so what is actually happening with the forward structure? Like, what is the actual forward structure? Because it doesn't seem like Gardner's being played as a disruptor. Like, admittedly, maybe he was more last night because he was playing on Likalia. But the idea that you're identifying Likalia as, that dominant interceptor when it's pretty clear it would have been Buckley.
Yeah.
Like, what's the go here? Like, are you not choosing your matchups? Are you letting the other players dictate that? What's happening?
I'm at the point now where, like, it surely can't be worse. And, the general consensus is we got to a grand final playing 2 talls and Cam Rayner as the third tall. It's obviously worked. We need to go back to that. This whole Gardner up forward experiment isn't working. And I'm sort of like, well, yep, let's take him out of the team or put him down back, move Payne up forward, or bring in Logan Morris. If you still want to try this third tall, try someone different just to see what effect it has on the team, because this ain't it. This ain't it, Chief.
I think it's just a hard one because the Smalls are so terrible against Geelong. Like, so it's like the Smalls are playing pretty poorly too. Like, Kyle Lohmann was pretty good. I knew he was definitely not going to miss that set shot. But he's stuck in this VFL mentality where everything is so much slower. I talked about it regarding JL and getting his billion touches. And it's like, because the game's slower. It's not as quick. It's not as like, when you get that mark on, half forward flank and you roll, you've got to go quick.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to go quick to one-on-ones. You can't just stop. And I think that is also an element with our inside 50s is we're getting to that point 70 meters out and we're too slow.
And Darcy Gardner is a big one for that. If he takes a mark around that area, he will assess every single option for an eternity. Whereas someone like a Hipwood will intuitively, or Joey Danaher or Cam Rayner, will intuitively like wheel and go and sort of cause a bit of havoc in the forward line. Darcy Gardner will stop and wait, and then by the time he's got it through his head, GWS have got numbers back, or whoever's got numbers back. So.
Yeah. The only luxury I'll give that is that, like, he did assist quite well to Charlie out the back, but it was sort of like, or something along those lines.
Yeah. He got, it was Charlie at the back of Likalia, and that was his second goal. That was great. That was a really...
And to me, at that point in time, I'm like, hey, here, it's like, wow, finally a not forward kicking the ball, where like they obviously don't just rail the hell out of the ball. They know how to place it because they're used to kicking outside of defensive and hitting a dime and stuff like that. But then it just didn't happen. And, like, I understand that we didn't get really any of the ball. And, like, our forward line were basically all the low possession getters in the whole field. Like, you can list them off almost in terms of, like, disposal getters. And it's just the lack of impact. It's, Gardner, Hipwood, Rayner, McCarthy, Lohmann are all in our lower, there was only like Fort and Starcevic in there and Payne that are like similar. And it's like, man, they're not getting the ball. It's not sticking. So are more Smalls the option? I don't even know because the Smalls aren't playing well.
Yeah.
So like, why can we expect them to raise? Like, I don't know.
I think certainly by the time that Zach Bailey is fit and ready to be back in, I think it's time to at least hit pause on this Gardner up forward experiment, because it's just there's something not working. Like, our connection forward of the ball is just pus at the moment, and it just has not been this big of an issue. Like, it's certainly been an issue. Like, as you said before, we just relied on weight of numbers of getting the ball forward, and eventually, goals would come. But that's not happening anymore either. And whether that's, teams have gone to work on us and how we do it, and that comes down to the next point, which is, after the sack Fagan, inevitably comes the backup point of he's got no plan B. So I don't know what this plan B is. Oh yeah, we know what plan A is, and maybe teams have figured it out and they're all across it now and how to do it perfectly against us each and every week. But this plan B that everyone keeps referring to, like, he's obviously not a bad coach. We witnessed it against Melbourne.
I don't know what plan B means.
Yeah.
Because to me, plan B is the long down the line, whereas people seem to think that that's plan A, and that is not plan A. I'll just tell you this. So players that only had one tackle last night. Lockie Neal, McCluggage, McCarthy, Lohman, Charlie Cameron. One tackle.
Yeah.
It's like, that is not good. Darcy Gardner, 4 tackles. Yeah, I know he got put back, but, it's interesting. And then even then you're looking at it going like 2 tackles was Zorko, Rayner, Danaher and Hipwood, which is like, how is Danaher and Hipwood, particularly Hipwood, because he wasn't playing in the ruck, getting more tackles than our 3 smalls?
Yeah. Those are unacceptable numbers.
I thought David Brereton made an interesting point after the game where he said that, like, when Danaher goes into his shell, it has like a knock-on effect.
Yep.
One goes into their shell, then the next one, and then the next one. And it's like, it's interesting because Dermot Brereton is absolutely rambly and like borderline insane. But there's an element where he kind of speaks philosophically about the game in these weird, like, untangible, unquantifiable ways. And there's, maybe it's because my brain is so like affected with rot from watching this team, but it made a lot more sense than it normally does. So pray for me, I suppose. But plan A, plan B, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, again, to me, that's something that's been siphoned in from soccer. The idea of like, plan A is not working. Chuck on your 6'4" striker and just kick balls to his head.
Yeah.
Like, that's what a plan B is in that sport. It's very easy. Or if you do that, the other one. But, like, I don't get what it is for Aussie rules in terms of, like, do you need to run and carry more? Do we have the players to do that? We're kind of trying to do that. And I think in the modern game, you really are getting a little bit of everything all of the time. Like, that's what plan A kind of is. Forward pressures are non-negotiable. Pressure through the midfield is non-negotiable. Drive from your back flankers is non-negotiable. One-on-one contest wins and duels are non-negotiable. Like, that's the same for every team.
I think it's just like, obviously the Carlton game, the Freo game, this game, Collingwood game to an extent, it's just the run of goals, and especially the red time goals and second half goals and third quarters have been particularly poor. I think it's like people are like, well, how can you keep letting this happen? Why aren't you changing something? Like, why, as David King always fucking says, don't get beaten by what you know. And it's like, well, we know this now. We know teams are getting runs of goals and we know we're garbage in third quarters this year. Why are you not doing something to counteract that?
Yeah, well, I think there's an element because it's not just this year. We look back and go, well, the grand final, there were runs of goals, albeit fewer. But in a grand final, you're almost looking at a 3-goal run being a 6-goal run, just in terms of the stakes and what it was within the circumstances of the game. The Carlton game before that, run of 5-6 goals. So it's now, you're looking at it being, what, 7 in 9 games?
Yeah.
That's and, Fagan flared up in his press conference when someone misspoke and said North Melbourne. And he's like, North Melbourne going to run again. It's like, dude.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's petty. That's Harrison. So don't do it. And, like, the poor fellow misspoke, but whatever. That's a pattern. And the thing is, it's like, there were, in the Carlton game this year, you're looking at it going, okay, with 5 minutes to go in the first quarter, we threw Darcy Gardner back behind the ball. Because maybe we're trying to address that sort of a thing. But I don't know. It's not working.
Yeah.
Is it working? No, obviously not. Like, and I get that it's probably the whole, like, the AFL doesn't want teams to throw people behind the ball and stuff like that. But yeah, it's probably something we forgot to mention last week. It's just like we were throwing one extra to the contest and then we were just hacking the ball forward. And it's like, okay, so are you going to make your numbers advantage work anywhere? Because wherever our spare man is proving to be, it's not working. And then when we went man-to-man like we did in sort of the third quarter last night, the first man was getting beaten, then everyone's coming over. Every single person, then they have one out over the top.
Man,
and that also happened against Geelong. And it's like, so your first contest is being lost. And every contest is then compromised because of that. It's like, that is not sustainable. If, maybe we should put someone behind the ball.
Well, I mean, that chain of play where GWS literally handballed it coast to coast, that was a killer. Like, you just looked at that.
And I think it was just because someone missed a spoil.
Yeah.
Or missed an intercept. And it's like, if we've got this like super talented forward line and these great one-on-one players, they can deal 5-on-6 if we need them to. If we're getting an extra man, or if we're beating that, or we're like getting better entries, they should be able to beat that. But like, and I know it kind of probably goes the other way around because other teams can probably beat us and we have a spare. But like, we got to make it count somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you too. Now the other, I guess, one more than the other, but the two that do cop it, especially in times like these, are our key forwards, Hipwood and Danaher. Hipwood especially. I mean, the amount of times, as equal as bloody Zach Fagan is drop Hipwood, and the same sort of question is there for you, is, okay, and bring in who? Brandon Ryan? Maybe. Logan Morris? Maybe. I think this is the lot we've got. Hipwood and Danaher, they were fine last year. Yep, they're certainly underperforming, especially these last 2 weeks. They've only got a couple of behinds to their names collectively. But these two are copping it, especially at the moment, as they do when we lose, like the Bulldogs game last year. Is there anything to be said about trying a different combination of key forwards?
How can you? I'd also, I'd argue as well, I think they weren't decent last year. I thought they were great last year.
Yeah.
And I think statistically, the things I brought up are indicative of that. It's just like, it's funny. Like, I think there's a weird thing in sport at the moment where there is the statistical analysis of a thing and then the eye test.
Yep.
And whichever one appears worse is the one that people go for people that don't like them. So, I understand it with this season for sure. Throw Charlie Cameron in there because, he might have kicked 2 goals last night, but not much else after that. And also, it's so weird to see him score 2 goals and then appear to be all up and about because his body language was a lot better than it was. And I get the confidence player thing, but it's like, be a professional. Don't be a child. And I don't see the lack of effort. I don't see the lack of care from Danaher and Hipwood that I do in Charlie Cameron. I know people probably think they do, but it's like Hipwood is running his guts out all the time. Joe Danaher's not. He's getting body too much, and it happens. But I
do see it. I do see it in Danaher a bit. Hipwood, I agree with you. He tries his guts out all game. Yeah, he's not getting the result. He's not holding on to marks that other key forwards may. He's not hitting the scoreboard in the same way that other key forwards may. Danaher, sometimes his second efforts, especially when following up with a tackle, he seems to get pushed under the ball a lot and sort of play for a free a bit too much for my liking. So that I don't really love from Joe. But he's also carrying the load of a second ruckman as well, where he does make up for a lot of shortcomings.
Yeah, I would almost prefer to see Danaher taking back position a lot in those sorts of things. If you're going to get consistently pushed under the ball, play on the back shoulder. Don't let him push you. And he's got the athleticism to jump over the top of people, and he fucking loves doing that. So why are you not doing that?
I guess just neither of them are particular. Hipwood is our contested marking forward, and he's not a strong contested marking forward option. Not in the same way that a big Tom Hawkins or a Peter Wright even, or he's just, neither of them have got the frame. They're both athletic and would ideally like to lead up at the ball given the opportunity, and I guess that's what's happening with Joe. And I guess that's what people are upset by, is we just don't have that strong, hulking, contested forward, contested marking forward. And we haven't had one since Brownie. Michael Close was the closest thing, and he blew his knee out, and he was no more.
Cool, Close.
Yeah. I do understand the frustration with those two because, I mean...
Yeah, but I think there's a lot that gets put into, particularly with Hipwood, is an element of effort. And I just... I'm happy and I'm okay with players, and this is where I give a lot of leeway to Jared Berry. It's I see the effort being put in.
Yep.
And eventually something's got to turn out right with them. And it generally does. People will play themselves into form and stuff like that. And the troubling thing is take the North Melbourne game out of it, because who cares about that one? It didn't matter. What is the set shot conversion for the three of them in those games aside? 1 goal, 15 each? I don't know. Charlie Cameron hasn't scored a set shot, I don't think.
Yeah.
Hipwood and Danaher have kicked a couple. it's not sustainable. Like everywhere across the ground, things are not, they're like anomalies. And is it just everything all together?
I think so. I think it's
maybe.
just so many little things, and you can lump as many little things into it as you want. You can chuck in the Chris Fagan, Hawthorn racism stuff that has to be wearing him down on some level as well. Chuck that in there as well. Chuck the fact that we hit the post 3 times in a bit over a quarter of footy, like all these,
and 3 times last week as well.
Yeah,
you know?
Just all these little things are coming together, adding up. 3 ACLs. But at the end of the day, there's the non-negotiables, the stuff you're talking about before, the effort, the intensity, the hunger, the tackling, the contest that is suffering as well.
Well, that's totally what's lacking for North Melbourne. And like they're copping fair criticism for it because it's the sort of thing that we saw we were lacking in before Chris Fagan turned up. And then like when he turned up, that became a non-negotiable and it made us a better team. We might not have been winning and stuff. And like, but it led to us being in games more. And then, you watch it over the couple of years. It's like we were in so many games in 18 and we lost so many games by 10 points or 15 points or whatever. And then we started winning those games. Whereas now, like, it's almost like we've been almost so far ahead of a lot of other clubs that we haven't actually been in a lot of fights enough to know that this is what it was going to be like this year when teams are catching up to you. And our team's gotten worse. Not because we've tried to make it get worse, but for things that have happened, injuries and whatnot, and form has made our team significantly worse than it was last year or the year before. And it's like, not anyone's fault. No one's wanting it to happen, but it's just like, it's an unfortunate thing that we've probably been pretty blessed not to have had to deal with over the last 5 years of like hitting a stop and just being like, okay, something's not right here. And do you... because when was it? We were 3-0 and you're like, throw the season out, we're done. It's like, okay, it's all good, but if that's your opinion, why should we still play Dane Zorko? Like,
well, and I think if this trajectory that we're on at the moment, 2-5 at the moment, if that blows out to 3-9, 4-12, whatever, then obviously those
4-20,
those conversations are going to happen, and those moves, those levers are going to start being pulled. But I think. And Fagan, the ever optimistic fella that he is, so positive all the time. And I guess that's wearing thin on people as well. It was quite refreshing when Hawthorn got smacked by... Who'd they get smacked by? And Sam Mitchell after the game in his press conference just said...
Not Melbourne. It was someone not great.
He simply came out and said, that's unacceptable. That's not... that's not to standard. That's not the part. And I'd like to hear something like that from Fagan. I don't want him looking at the stat sheet going, well, we're green in these areas. We won the contested possession, the inside 50s and all that sort of stuff. It's just like, oh yeah, learnings and all that sort of stuff. And I get that you've got to be positive and you've got to have a glass half full, and that's who he is as a person. We love him for it. Like, no doubt about it. But at some point you do want a bit of
accountability.
Yeah, just...
And a bit of, like... I think we all would assume that there's accountability leveled at the playing group. But I think for fans, as we are here on the Brisbane Lions Fancast, we look at it and go, will someone stand up? And like Lachie Neale did it after round 1, and that turned out to not be great because I question his effort.
Yeah.
And the way that he spoke on Tuesday and the way it's like, can someone take responsibility or say that we're trying to fix this and like we're not happy with it? And, throw someone under the bus, throw the players under the bus, say they're not working hard enough, or because everyone's going to do that anyway. So you're going to have to deflect those sorts of questions regardless of whether you give them something to talk about.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I need someone to do that as well. And I don't care who it is, but ideally it would be Fagan, just to see a different side of him. Like, he gets prickly in press conferences, but it's always in a defensive way, not on a get on the forefront and be like, hey, this was simply not good enough. Because last night was not good enough. It was not acceptable from a team that came in as premiership favourites to turn up efforts like that is unacceptable, as Sam Mitchell would put it. And I'd fucking love Fags to come out and say that instead of pointing to the inside 50s.
I think that's the worst performance we've had since 2017. in terms of effort and stuff like that. Like I know we had some poor ones last year. The Hawthorn one was bad, and the Port Adelaide one.
Gold Coast, Port Adelaide, Hawthorn were all bad last year, but
this one was just, there was something different about it. It felt different.
It's because that was basically a must-win game. That was the game to keep our season afloat, to keep, hopes for supporters, the team, everyone, that, we can still potentially scrape into top 4 here, cause some real damage in the finals, maybe, like I said, with a very little margin for error, work our way to another grand final. But that was a must-win game. That was a line in the sand sort of game. Yep. And we just folded.
I think probably if I can use this analogy in terms of like the games last year were we'd performed well outside of those things for it to be the anomaly. And when you're looking at a graph that's trending upwards, but it's kind of a bit like liney and it's kind of going up and down, and you might have things that are lower than it was before or whatever, average temperatures in Earth or whatever, where it's like, people are like, well, the temperature's lower this year. And it's like, but it's trending upwards for 50 years. That sort of a thing. I feel like this was one where we are trending downwards and the Melbourne was the anomaly.
Yep.
And this was the one where you're like, oh, so we're really trending down. Like it was like we're trending down and this was a low point as well, because there's nothing to rest our hat on here and go, well, actually, and I know we've talked about underlying numbers and stuff like that, but come on.
Yeah.
No. Unfortunately, it's like this team has trended downwards, and that's what made this as bad. Or, as bad as probably those ones where we got dusted by Adelaide by 80 points or whatever in, 17 or 18 or whatever it was. Can't remember. 17 probably.
Yeah.
It's cool, because just, the last quarters this week and last week, we didn't want to be there. We were making dumb decisions for no reason and just not even caring.
Yeah. Hack kicks, dump kicks, and it just went straight to GWS players. And
then they just elegantly glide through.
Yeah.
We're just butlers opening fucking doors and stuff. Butler probably wouldn't do it. Do butlers just do food, or do they do doors as well?
I don't know. You have to ask someone fortunate enough to have a butler in their life. I think they sort of just do everything.
Yeah, the guy from The Nanny used to open the windows and stuff, right? Nigel?
Yes.
Yeah. What a classic show.
It was definitely a show. Right, well, those sort of seem to be, apart from the general civil unrest in amongst the supporter base this week, those seem to be the things that people sort of go to. They flood to the Plan B. They flood to Sack Fags, Hipwood. It's just hard to pinpoint where it's all going wrong, but it is all going wrong.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Except for Harris Andrews.
Harris Andrews, Ryan Lester, Wilmot, Zorko are probably 4 players you can say have maintained or improved. I would say basically everyone else has gone down in level of output. And I probably am missing people there, but as a whole, you can't have that.
Yeah. I mean, Jared Berry's been better, but...
Yeah, true. And then comes the, him, McCluggage, Link, all up for contract, still not signed. Is it going to happen? We've got a 6-year deal in front of Hugh. That's just another thing that you don't want to have to deal with when everything else is already falling down around you.
Yeah. It's hard. It'll be hard pressed to convince the team. And it's funny, the team aren't working, but then to have to then go and convince the team in a 10-day break that it's worth playing. I mean, you're professional footballers. Do your job. I would. I was thinking. So I had a funny thought, as I do, and I'm thinking about kind of the stages of where you watch sport, particularly as a boy or a young man, where you start off and you're like a teenager or a young kid, and you're looking up to these adults, and you're like, oh, these are my idols, and you're like, yeah, they're so old and they're so big and strong and whatever. And then you get to sort of 15, 16, 17, and then you go, shit, someone's playing for the team that's my age.
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? And then you get to the point where most of the players are your age that are playing. And you're like, I think my time is now gone. And then you get to the point where more than half, and then you've just got like one guy, and it's Dane Zorko, and he's the only one that's older than you. And you're like, please don't retire so that forever I will have someone older than me playing football.
Yep. And
I assume it's probably going to happen with coaching as well, where you're like, oh God, I'm now older than all of the coaches in 20 years or whatever, 50 years, 20 or 50 years. I don't think I'm going to be alive in 50 years. Let's be perfectly honest.
Oh, you never know.
I don't want to be alive in 50 years.
The moderns, the wonders of Western medicine in the modern day and age. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like, yeah.
And I think when your team are playing well and having a good time, existential threats like that are less palpable. But here we are. The team are now 2-500, 4-20, and you're sitting there going, I'm older than all these lot. I think maybe Ryan Lester and I are the same age, so maybe there is like actually the same age.
Yeah.
I think there might be. I don't know how he does it because I've had a sore knee and haven't played indoor soccer for 3 weeks. So
yeah, well, I mean, here we are just getting to fling feces from behind microphones with little to nothing to show for it. So that's where we're at.
Like as individuals, or
yeah, I guess.
Or I'm quite happy with where I'm at in my life, to be honest.
I mean, I could, sure.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. I think obviously today has been a negative show. We've been sitting in the dark, but I think it's sort of representative, certainly, of what I've come across from many Lions supporters at the moment, and hopefully.
Well, I'm only sitting in the dark because I get really bad glare from the window. So.
I meant emotionally. Hopefully next week will be a little bit better. Don't forget, Q Clash Sunday. We have got tickets available at our website, brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. Double premium pass up for grabs if you want to go witness some of what you saw last night in real life. Oh boy. Do we have the prize for you?
Yeah, hopefully kind of like people bought their tickets early on in the season.
Yeah, look, you'd hope the 10 days... What is it they used to say on 360 when Bob Murphy would come on and Jack Rewalt? Had they circle up? Or the infamous Carlton camp last year where they all went to, I don't know, Adam Chera's farm or some bullshit like that. We really need one of those. One of those like truth-telling circles of like, hey, 2-5 here. Everyone needs to pull their head in and decide whether we want to be footballers.
They need to go on like Daniel Rich's fishing boat that I'm assuming he has because he likes fishing. Just take him out to Moreton Bay, sink the ship, and be like, you figure it out.
Sure.
Like, figure it out, and if you do, you'll be fine. Like, sink or swim.
Yeah.
Obviously, there will be collateral damage in the form of Daniel Rich's fishing yacht, but like, that he may or may not have. But if you can swim to Peel Island, good luck.
Yeah, maybe there's method to that.
Really?
I mean, there's got to be some circuit breaker, some sort of hard reboot. There's got to be something.
Why don't they just parade them around the city and let people throw tomatoes at them like they used to do back in like the Victorian ages and Middle Ages and stuff?
I think we've just genuinely moved along from a lot of practices that were commonplace in that day and time.
Yeah, but maybe it was done better then. Like,
maybe.
The public opinion was not just morons like you and me talking. It was like people with vegetables. Actually, the price of tomatoes is probably way too expensive for that to happen these days. Can everything.
Yep. No, that's the...
Even the tomatoes, and throw the canned tomatoes at them. $1 a piece.
All right. Q Clash this Sunday. Memorable games. There is a few. Is there any particular Q Clash that springs to mind for you?
Fagan's first game. The old 3-pointer or whatever.
Is there a Q Clash in round one?
Yeah, at Metricon in round 1, 2017. We got up to about a 6 or 7 goal
That's
start.
right. I was at a wedding when that was happening. Yeah.
It also included a Clash of the Titans scuffle between Sam Mays and Callum Archie, which was funnier back in the day because I thought they were both massive wusses, but now Cal Archie's kind of come around. So, Dane Zorko got a few goals. I think Daniel Beams.
Ooh.
Far out. That is not a good name. Dane Beams, I think, won the old Ashcroft medal. Yeah. Gary Ablett played and I think hurt his shoulder, so nothing new there. Hipwood took some contested marks and we're thinking beauty. And then I think we lost 10 straight.
That sounds more like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the style at the time. That one, I don't know. That one where Rayner missed that shot.
Yep. There's been a few over the years, and like just Zorko and Took adding fuel to the fire every now and then. I'm sure there'll be some run in, and you have to think this will be the third week in a row where Lockie gets a fair amount of attention, like the way Took played him last year. Now, I don't know if that is something that Dimmer wants to do. Like, he's historically not really played taggers, but having seen the effects of it last year where Took played out of his skin, got, 29 touches, both shut Lockie completely out of the game, had a whole lot of the ball himself, was absolutely influential. Copped a week for the squirrel grip in the end, but you'd have to think that is something he might consider.
Squirrel grip?
No, Dimmer pulling the trigger on that move because Lockie's not coping. He's not coping at the moment with the attention. There will be some changes, you'd have to think. Oscar, you'd have to hope comes back in. I don't know how serious that hamstring that Archie did was, so he may miss.
Sharpie.
Yeah.
Bring him in.
Well, the VFL happens tomorrow. Jared Lyons and that Tunstall is playing in the VFL as well after only putting together half a game last night. That's a big workload for him, including a trip from Canberra. Playing South tomorrow.
Southport. The Sharks. Is it the Sharks?
Yep.
Yeah, nice. I suppose it's right next to SeaWorld, which doesn't have any sharks, but might.
Yeah, it might. It's been a minute since I've been to SeaWorld. Is there any changes you can see or want to see?
Admittedly, I forgot about this.
Yeah, we've been a bit all over the shop today, and that's just reflective of the state of our brains.
Maybe Shadow Brain will come in to give us the intellect to force the issue. I don't know. Should we do like a Twitter thing of the people's changes later on this week?
Yeah.
I think the people's changes could be fun.
Sure.
Just in terms of like, let's create the most insane alternative thing.
All right, well...
And by thing, I mean lineup.
All right, well, I'll chuck that up at the Brisbane Lions Fancast Twitter page, BL Fancast, on all socials, by the way. Facebook, Instagram.
It may also include Levi Ashcroft in the centres. Just,
honestly,
you never know.
He's killing it.
Getting Coleman on one leg, still better than most. Like, Dale Morris actually playing. Like, that kind of shenanigans. But I mean, suppose, Big O if he comes back in. Logan Morris.
Yeah.
Bruce Revel. Harpy. Who else plays for our team?
Your mate Jackson Pry's actually been putting together a good couple of weeks in the VFL, so he may come in for Kalachi.
I like that guy.
I know you do.
He's a nice fella.
Oh, and by the way, last week where we spoke about how Dev Robertson only had the 8 touches, the
old shoulderino, eh?
Yeah, so that sort of came out later after the fact. So, we won't be seeing him for a while. So that's not doing him any favours trying to get back in the team.
Eagle wing clipped, hey? He's just preheating the West Coast oven, eh?
Well, mate,
injuries.
Same wins as West Coast. They're every chance to go past us when they play the Gold Coast tomorrow or whenever it is.
No Harley Reid, no
Harley
party.
Reid. Yeah, it's true. That's crazy. I don't know why you rest him at this stage when you have the chance to put together some good footy. Anyway, not the point. Brisbane Lions Fancast back for another week.
Still waiting for a win so I can do all my crazy zany segments.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not too far around the corner. Like, we've got some winnable matches on the way, but
if we don't go 6 straight, I mean, I don't know what else. Like, we're in the same position we are now. Like, cool. So we should be winning our next 6 games.
Sure.
I got to tell you, when round 1 happened and Capish messaged and said, worst case scenario was whatever it was, 3-2 or something. And I was like, God, am I the only one that's really worried about this fixture list?
It has been a grueling start to the season. We've played some good teams.
I think it's as hard a fixture as anyone's possibly ever had.
True, but we should still be better than 2 and 5.
Yeah, of course, but still, when you're looking at it like prelim rematch, your weird, like, what was round 2?
Freo.
Yeah, Optus. So travel, then you come back, play your like most hated team, Collingwood, or grand final. So we had prelim, hardest trip, grand final rematch, game in like a weird fever dream against North Melbourne because Gather Round doesn't really exist. Then you're playing against like your arch nemesis team at a ground you've not won at in 17 years. And then it's like, then also play the undefeated team and then play against like the best team away. It's like far out, man. Like maybe they all got in their own heads about it.
Maybe.
But if someone is willing to put in the effort to find me a stretch of 7 games that are more difficult contextually than this, they can have this spoon.
Oh, well, bit on the line there. Lots at stake. Is that a pre-used spoon? Is that a match-worn spoon?
Yeah, I was used to stir my coffee.
Oh, there you go.
So spoons on the line, or you can have this Lego fin of Zinedine Zidane holding a gun. So
2 great prizes you won't find anywhere else in the world up for grabs right here on the Brisbane Lions Fancast.
So if anyone can find me that, then good to go.
All right. That's enough of that.